Welcome into the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast. Andrew Klissa, Frank Bonanni of the York Daily Record, and Mike Gross of LNP. We got a great guest later on. Trace McSorley, the former GOAT quarterback of the Nittany Lions, will join us here on the BlueWhite Tailgate Pawcast. Gentlemen, a little less spunk in my step for this intro. Obviously, coming off a loss to Ohio State once again. And I feel like before we get into this, I have to apologize to Ohio State because last week I asked who the tougher team was. I said I thought Penn State was going to be the tougher team, both physically and mentally. I made a Lou Holtz reference. Ryan Day could flip out at me if he even knew who I was. Threw me up, spit me out, ripped me apart. I owe Ohio State an apology because they were both physically and mentally tougher than Penn State. So let's get right into it. How damaging is this loss for Penn State nationally in terms of the brand? Because articles galore, not too kind to the blue and white.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat damaging. I think this has become a pattern that everybody notices. I mean, this is a pattern of failing to come up big in the biggest spots. The history, it's weird with Ohio State because they've played them tough so many times, but the last 2 years, the offensive efforts have been feeble. I think that's exactly the right word, just feeble. That part of it I don't really understand, and that part of it is not a part of a bigger pattern. I don't know. I was pretty surprised by the way that game went. Not so much because I picked Ohio State to win, but the way it went. And again, the offensive performance was very strange.
Yeah, I would say agree with that base. Not so much I wasn't surprised last year by it, but this year I am because of not just the talent they have, but their coordinator and what he's shown and why James hired him and what he's done this year, that I really thought that no matter what weakness Penn State has coming into that game offensively, that Andy Kotelnicki would find a way to work around that. If there was ever a team on offense for Penn State that would have a chance of working around a deficiency, it would seem on offense, it would seem to be this one. So we didn't see that. And I really thought that at times, maybe this is what you're thinking, Mike, is that at times the offense looked a little bit like last year's game where Drew Aller goes back to pass and you're just praying, if you're a Penn State fan, that there's somebody for him to throw to. And I'm surprised by that. I mean, I understand some of the other issues potentially because you're playing an elite team, and every time you play an elite defense, you're going to have issues, but there was not a counterpunch that I thought was there, really. I mean,
and Frank's right. Last year, clearly there was a disconnect between Mike Yurcich and the rest of the staff and James Franklin. I mean, and clearly that was a problem last year. This is and that the fact that problem isn't what we can point to makes it even more baffling, I think.
That was the most disappointing aspect for me because we praised Andy Kotelnicki, and I'm comparing him to Walter White and Heath Ledger's Joker to introduce a little chaos. And I know people are out there saying, well, it's a gimmick offense. I don't think it's a gimmick offense when you break it down and you listen to how he explains it. I think it's a legitimate offense. But the fact that it had no spunk, no spark, no creativity, and I understand Ohio State's defense is good. I understand their defensive backs are better than Penn State's wide receivers. But to not be able to scheme and find easy, simple throws at time was very frustrating. So where's the turning point? Like, when does it happen? If not these past 2 years, the national media, some were saying last year Penn State was going to take the step to being elite. I hate that word. I think you just need to win a big game. But if not this year, like, when is it going to happen?
Well, I think for Penn State, it's definitely on offense. So we talked to some players like Vega Ione today, who says that, at least to us, he believes they're close, right? On the offensive line, that some of the problems with the run game and other things are because they're not hitting the block quite right, that they're working on it, that he thinks they're close. Who knows if that's just talk. But to me, that would be the hope, right? Because you can't transform your wide receiver core in midseason. You have to go with what you work with. But can you get better and more efficient up front Yeah, I think that could be possible because their two running backs are just not doing it. And I can't analyze exactly what's going on with the health or performance of Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, but could they benefit from maybe better blocking at times or technique or whatever that is? Sure. So maybe that's the hope because they still have 4 games left that if they win them all like they're supposed to, they will get another shot at a big game where everyone will be watching and critiquing again.
We think they will.
If they win 4 games, they will. 11-1, they're in the playoffs.
Well, I think so. I don't think
guaranteed 11-1, they'll be in the playoffs. Now, whether they're at home or not, but yeah, because they're going to be ranked tonight? They're in the top 10 tonight.
Yeah, they'll be in the top 10 tonight. It'll be
interesting. So if they win all 4, they're not falling out of the top 10. That can't happen. So they'll get a playoff game. So what they make of it, they'll have that shot this year where they have not had that after disappointments the previous years.
I thought a couple things here specifically. The first drive of the game, I thought that was a good drive. Yeah. And it was the 8 minutes. It was 15 plays. And a wide receiver was not targeted in that drive. Now, there was a couple of times when Drew Aller ran the ball where those were called passes, certainly, but it's almost like the wide receivers, it's not just the production, it's their absence from the game plan. I mean, it's almost like in that drive, it's almost like the wide receivers were like a basketball player that you have to have out there, even though he can't score. So just go set a screen or make it move without the ball and make somebody chase you around. That's the most we can hope from the wide receivers. And then the other thing is that 3rd and goal in the fourth quarter. I just can't believe that Andy Kotelnicki 3 times in a row ran the ball up the middle with tight formations when everything we've seen from him suggests that in his own words, he is about deception and motion and throwing a lot of stuff at the eyes of the defense, and then to just completely get away from that. I know that Big Vega was out in the H-back thing and then tried to block and whiffed on the block 3 times. I realize that, but I mean, that really wasn't, that was window dressing. That really wasn't, I just thought that was amazingly uncharacteristic of him. That part was just astounding to
me. I was befuddled, and I'm just going to read something here I have on my notes. The final series for Penn State, I compared it to the worst play calling sequence I've seen in the James Franklin era. And going back further, I think it's the worst play calling sequence at Penn State since 2007 at Michigan State, when Brent Carter ran 3 or 4 straight plays at the Spartans, ripped off chunks, and then Anthony Morelli threw 4 straight incompletions when there's ample time on the clock from the 24-yard line. Not that I'm holding a grudge for that. One of the first times I met Jay Paterno in person working together, I brought that right up. I think I stunned Jay when I brought it up. Jay literally said to me, he's like, overcoached it. Thinks about it, overcoached it. So I understand that. And the worst big game sequence at Penn State, big game meaning ranked opponent with a lot on the line, 1993 Michigan in Penn State's 1,000th game. And that took place over 2 quarters because it was the end of the 3rd quarter, and then the 4th down play took place in the south end zone to start the 4th, and Michigan stoned Penn State 4 times on the goal line. So Saturday brought some wounds back for me. I don't even know where to go. I kind of just sat there in stunned silence based, Mike, on what you just said. There was not even no creativity, but it was literally just the same first 3 plays.
Yeah, that part of it bothered me more than a lot of people made a big deal out of. You've got to get Tyler Warren's the ball in his hands, and I get that. I don't disagree with it, but I mean, I think you call plays, and you call plays to try to beat the defense, and I just thought that was and it wasn't like it was 1st and goal on the half-yard line. That would be different. It was 1st and goal on the 3. You got to get pushed to, that was, I don't know. I was just amazed by that.
Yeah. I think 1st or 2nd down, I really like the way that Drew Aller has pulled off some fakes on his runs when they've needed it.
Yeah.
He's been pretty good at that. This deception.
Yeah, that's a good.
And on first or second down in that series, I would have considered running one of those where maybe you run it on first, you look like you're going to run it on second. He pulls it and heads for one side of the field. And maybe there's a receiver going out. I don't know. But, not maybe. Here's the thing. It's a lot harder, and I don't think people understand this too. The play calling in the field gets a lot tougher when you get down to the 5-yard line. Things are all different. And, I think you have a tendency maybe to try to overcoach something, because it's every defender is right on top of you. So it's a different deal. Do you be loose like you were early, or do you think you have the physicality to run your play? I mean, that's the age-old question. I think that will always be there. I'm surprised that we waited till fourth down to get any type of pass. And here's the thing. When it came, they're looking for Warren. He's not open. They throw to Dinkins. And here's the deal. He's interfered with, okay? But the problem is it's fourth down and you're throwing it into a mass of bodies, so you're not going to get that call, right? So my point is that you put yourself then further in a bad position because you're going to run a play where basically the other team is going to be allowed to interfere because you're throwing it with 4 defenders around him. You know what I mean? Tough situation.
It is a tough situation, and you're right about you said it's the age-old question, but this answer seemed insanely out of character for Andy Cotto.
Yes.
That's my thing.
Absolutely.
After the game, when we talk about out of character, the players, there's been lots of that home before. They're walking off. There's boos during the alma mater. I'm not making any comments on boos. I will say the fan that was confronting Franklin, I think was, out of line. I do. I understand the frustration. The fire Franklin chant, that's people's right. I get that under consent. The kid confronting him, I don't like that. I also don't like James going back at him. That's kind of a repeat from 2018. But I understand their perspective. And people were like texting me, they're like, you got to say like what we're feeling and things like that. I don't know exactly what everybody's feeling, but I do think that after the success of 2016, James made a post-game comment. Might have been one of you guys that asked the question, or David Jones. Did this win happen as you expected? And James said, right on schedule. Right then and there, I thought the expectations were raised, and James being positive maybe put things ahead of schedule, for Penn State. So there's that. 2018, there was the rant about being a good program versus a great program. Guys going to class, taking notes at every single meeting and saying he's going to, make sure that guys are comfortable being uncomfortable. Well, I think the fans are uncomfortable. So I kind of think James's own words has made the fans very frustrated. And then there's this polarization in Penn State between Paterno, they call them Paternoites, and that, I have Joe right here. I have a Wheaties box of Joe right there. So I guess I'm a Paternoite. And then the Franklin era. And what I don't understand is, I don't understand people saying, well, Joe's record from 1995 to 2011 was this. Why are you comparing a 66-year-old man to 82 to a coach in his, like, you're not doing anything to actually alleviate anything. You're cherry picking numbers. And the bottom line is Penn State has to win games. They have to win games and they have to beat Ohio State. I know they rotate off the schedule, but somebody else is going to rotate on that's going to be highly ranked, whether it's Oregon, Michigan in the future, soever. So I think that's the issue that has to be solved. And I actually like how James Franklin, no matter how upset people were and are, I like that he came in the press conference and said, I own this. I did.
I thought Monday was maybe his best press conference ever. I thought it was a lot going on there. Good questions and good answers. I don't understand the going at the fan. I think you just walk away from that. And then what he said to the fan was, "What's your name? Why don't you identify yourself?" Well, he
identify yourself.
So why? Well, I thought that was. I didn't think there was much going on there. The stuff you mentioned about 2018 and we're gonna get in the submarine and all that stuff. I think he realizes now that was a mistake. because he doesn't do that anymore. He doesn't come in there and make this grand statement of purpose after a loss. And so, it's just everything these guys say gets incredibly scrutinized, and they have so many decisions to make about the image that they want to present every day to recruits, to fans, to players, to staff. And I think for the most part, Franklin has been okay at it. There's been times when he has not. But I thought Monday was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to judge a lot going forward, and I'm going to see how because this is done, man. Then they lost to a good team and they didn't do what they needed to, but there's still 4 games to go. So I'm going to judge this based on what comes next. How do they respond? How do they react? Can they get better at some of the problems they have, right? Because I think James, he's a man of routine. He's a man of discipline. He does things the same way in a good way all the time. I'd say he's arguably the most consistent. Penn State has become literally maybe the most consistent top 2 team in the country. He's more consistent than Joe in some ways with their results. They don't lose to teams they're not supposed to lose to, which is incredibly hard in this day and age to do, right? He hasn't solved the big game thing, obviously, but so let's see. And to me, I want to see how right now the magnifying glass is on again. I want to see how they respond, because this is different this year than other years. Other years, they pretty much be done, because how are you going to get into the top 4? Well, they're going to get another shot. What are they going to do with it? Andy Kotelnicki's only through a little over half of his first year at Penn State. So, yeah, that was a fail. But let's see what this goes to from here. I mean, I'm going to big judge on what comes next for me.
In that respect, I think it was interesting that Franklin said on Monday that on Sunday, when we had our staff meeting, everybody's in the room, we went through the film, we graded it, all that stuff. And then he said it sounded like he was saying he sent the message to his staff that this games like the one we just lost are the reason we're here. It's the reason all of you are here. It was a little bit of a change in tone from the 1-0 this week forever thing. I thought that was a pretty strong statement that maybe he realizes that the clock is ticking a little bit in terms of taking the next step that everybody program wants to take.
A fan texted me and said, I'd rather lose one of the games, Frank, you were referring to, the Iowa game in 2008, or one of those Urban Meyers that got beat by Purdue and then smoked by Iowa in those 2 different years, and beat one of the big teams to say we could do it. And their reasoning was because they said weird shit happens in college football, but at Penn State it doesn't. And that's one of those things. It's you have to look at that. And we've talked about games and Penn State coming through, and it's hard for people to be disappointed in the defense. I mean, they put out a net 13 in points. They scored a touchdown. But yet the final drive, I think, leaves a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouth. Where does Penn State go to get that corrected? Because if they want to take steps forward, that's a must, that they have to be able to stop the run going forward here to wrap up the Big Ten slate and then in the college football playoffs.
That looked to me like they ran a lot of the zone read. If I understand the X and O's correctly, they ran this zone read that everybody runs, and the quarterback runs came down to a tight end blocking a cornerback, and if he blocks him, it's a successful play. It looked like it was that isolated, which that seemed a little strange to me. Just one, a quarterback against a tight end, you're not gonna win that consistently. He's got to get off the block and make the tackle, or it's not going to get made. So it seems like to get caught in that situation where it was that isolated was a little bit of a disconcerting thing. Although, as you said, overall, especially because they created a touchdown and what was a great play by Zion Tracy, you have to say the defense played well enough to win, as it did last year against Ohio State and Michigan. Right?
Yeah, I think maybe they took on, unfortunately, the tenor of the game, the deflation of not scoring, of even the crowd in a sense. And I don't know if that'll happen again. I mean, you got to learn from that. And I think once Ohio State ran a couple of successful plays, it was almost like there wasn't any stopping them. They had, you needed to do it on down 1 or down 2, and that's it. And then once that didn't happen, it's kind of like, we were talking about the bowl game in 2018 that Trace was a part of against Kentucky. And Penn State, a similar situation in that they elected to kick a field goal thinking they're getting the ball back. They never got the ball back. The defense had to make a stop. They couldn't stop Kentucky. They couldn't stop them on the ground, even though it looked like you knew what was coming. So, maybe it's more an internal kind of feelings that you got to be able to then regroup immediately and step up. And I think they can fix that. Some of the things on offense, I think, are a little more challenging, but I think they can fix the defensive effort there.
Well, speaking of effort, it was a loss, but we still have to give out our Lions roar. And I'm going with, Zion Tracy, obviously big play. The steamrollers are going to kind of come out, and Penn State's going to be able to take control. Everything is hyped up. And then all of a sudden, it becomes 2008 Penn State, Iowa, after that big touchdown early, and game kind of unfolded similar way. But Zion Tracy gets my Lions roar for the pick 6. And, I think that's an easy one to go at. Who else was stand out for you guys in the loss?
I think Zakee Wheatley is starting to become the guy that Franklin has been talking about for a couple of years with him. I think he's starting to become that guy, playmaker, and not only a really solid safety, but also a playmaker. And the pickings are a little bit slim this week, obviously, but he would be my guy.
I'll try to go with a couple offshoots. I'll go with Nick Singleton, leads the team in receiving, is contributing any way he can, and he may not be 100% healthy. I mean, I can't imagine he is.
I brought that up, Frank. I suspect that he is.
Yeah. So he's gutting it out. He's still contributing. Had also a nice kickoff return or two. And then Ryan Barker again. Suddenly, for maybe the first time in at least since last year, but maybe go further back, you almost feel like the kid is going to make the field goal before he comes out and actually kicks it. That kind of confidence. And that's big going forward. It could even be bigger games yet to come. So
everybody went nuts about him after his first game, but he's sustained it now. He's been perfect. I mean, it's now more impressive than it was then, although we're talking about it less now. People are talking about it less now because I think because like you said, Frank, there's a confidence. They expect him to do it.
And these are pressure kicks. I mean, these were must gets.
Right.
Penn State was to have a chance. So, I mean, he definitely deserves more than one Lions roar. He gets it. And just for me, on an unsung hero, something that's not going to show up in the stat sheet, and it's tough to find them in games like this, Nick Singleton's block to not pick up a penalty on Tyler Warren's run around the end to set it up. I thought it just showed, not afraid to do the dirty work, and then he did it, and it was smart that he didn't put a penalty by making a blindside block. Kind of had his arms out like he was
really sort of kept the arms wide. It was kind of,
oh yeah,
it may not have been the absolutely textbook technique, but he definitely, that was a good play. I noticed that too. Yeah.
So we could continue talking about Ohio State for days on ends. We mentioned some of the refs. We're not getting into that. Penn State had a chance to win the game. That's the bottom line. They didn't come out with the win. But our guest, he knows something about winning games, and he won a lot of big games. One of the best, possibly the best quarterback in all of Penn State history, Trace McSorley. Trace, thanks for joining us here, man.
What's up, guys? Appreciate y'all having me here.
Absolutely.
All right, Trey, so we thought we'd have you here under a little bit different circumstances, but we're coming in off a loss to Ohio State. You're in the locker room. on Monday or Sunday for the Nittany Lions. What's your message to the guys?
No, I mean, the biggest thing that the message would have to be is just that you can't let one loss turn into two, and you can't let it snowball and become something bigger than what it was. Sunday you came in, got all the corrections done. Probably have a lot of really tough conversations where people might get feelings hurt, and people obviously was upset from the game, but you're going to have those tough conversations on Sunday. But then come Monday, you're rolling right in to the next week. And you have to get focused on the next week and the next game and really just come out early on in the week, prepared, ready to go, and having your best week so that, like I said, you can't let one loss turn into two, because you everything that you are going for is still in front of you.
Trace, I got to ask you, you were involved in a couple different scenarios. In 16, you guys responded from defeat and got better, it seemed to people as the season went on. In 17 and 18, you guys did kind of let one loss go to another. What's the difference? How do you do? What's the key to doing what you just said? Is there something you learned from your time there that could help understand this situation this time?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, from the players' perspective, there was a lot of, we had to take ownership of what was going on the field. And kind of what I mean by that is and I had a coach say when I got to the NFL was, at the end of the day, it's players and not plays, if that makes sense. So the players are the ones on the field doing it. And at the end of the day, it's on you. It's on us as players to make the plays when they're there and get things done on the field. Obviously there's a lot of different factors into that. Plays, coaches, everyone plays a part in it. But at the end of the day, that ball snap, the players are the ones that are making it work. And I think we really, in 16, we took a big step in ownership from really just where we were before. And then, I think part of it is, the ball bounces your way a couple of times and then that confidence builds. And I think confidence helps a lot in that situation. So taking ownership and then really just, I think coming out this week will be big because you got to get that last loss out of your mouth and that bad taste out. And you have to be able to move on and get back into that win column, because then that confidence starts to build.
Trace, when after the game on last year when they lost to Ohio State, Drew Aller was really visibly emotional and in tears and very, very upset. And this year in a similar situation, he wasn't like that at all. Do you look at that and see maturity as a leader? Do you think he had to sort of think about how to be a leader and the intangibles of body language and the message that you send as the quarterback?
Yeah, I just think that's his growth from year one to year two. He became much more of a leader, much more, you've seen him in his plays, much more verbal out there. Much more of a verbal leader than I think he was last year. And I just think that's his maturity, growing up, becoming a year older, more comfortable, again, leading the guys, more comfortable, being in that spot. Like the first time you're in that spot after a tough loss, I think you don't necessarily know how you react until you're going to be in that position. Now he's been there. He knows what it is and what it feels like. So, I just think that's his, maturity level from year one as a starter to year two, getting better.
You mentioned as you try to take the next step, sometimes you need a couple bounces to go your way. Penn State almost had one of those bounces with a fumble that was initially ruled a fumble and then incomplete. But going back to 2016, you guys had a moment that I think is one of the greatest moments in Penn State history. Your pass to Irv Charles. Mm-hmm. 6 years since you've been gone from Penn State, 8 years since that play. Do you look at that as kind of the moment that everything started clicking for 2016? Because just in that Minnesota game, there were 3 massive plays, and you're involved in all of them.
Yeah, I think exactly you said, a play that, it does kind of just open the floodgates where, you're kind of pounding away at it, chipping away at the rock, and nothing quite bursts, nothing quite breaks open. But all it takes is one more swing, and then it breaks it all open for you. So that was, I think, one of the, in the moment, we didn't realize that was a play because that was, early third quarter, I believe it was. So it didn't at the time factor in as the play that changed the game, but it gave us confidence And even just seeing, like, in the moment, it very easily could have been Irv catches it and gets tackled right where he got it. But he sheds the guy off, kind of like stiff arms another, and then breaks away from people. And I think when a young guy like Irv on that team, who he was at that point a rotational receiver for us, knew he had a lot of talent, but he just hadn't cracked the starting lineup. But when he makes a play like that, it elevates everyone else around you. And I think that's all it takes is one guy stepping up and making a huge play when the ball comes to the direction, when that opportunity presents itself. I think that was really just a big moment for the entire team to see Irv make that play. The juices in the stadium rose up, and then we were able to, again, get that confidence and really ride that momentum from that point really until the rest of the season.
Trace, do you see, offense better than most everybody in college football. So do you see anything with this offense in particular that stands out to you, maybe to help people understand where this can still be headed? Is there this season where it can still go? Is there any kind of things that just hit you going forward?
Well, I think what we saw a little bit early on, and we're kind of with an offense like what they run there, like they're so multiple. Like they have so many different personnel packages, and there's so many different guys that they have, different weapons that they're able to move pieces around and get them the ball in different ways. And I think because of that, because they're so multiple, sometimes it'll be a run-heavy game. Sometimes, one receiver is going to flash a bunch and get a bunch of catches where a couple other guys who had in previous games, maybe the ball doesn't come their way. And I think with an offense like that, it's just about staying the course and understanding like we're all pushing in the same direction, and the plays, the opportunities, the catches, they're going to come to you, especially as a player. And I think what Coach Andy Koldnicki's really been so good at is utilizing the personnel in different creative ways to, if potentially if they got a guy banged up here or there, like they're able to throw in an extra offensive lineman, you maybe help them gain a hat in the run game if they're down on the receiver, or, put more receivers out there to spread them out and, quick game them all the way down the field and hit a couple runs inside. And I think that's what they're able to do. And I think they just need to kind of find their groove in what really kind of gets them cooking. Because when Drew's in a rhythm, they're able just to, run quick game, push the ball down the field, and then it opens up the running game underneath. Even being able to like rotate Bo in there, like all the types of things they do, you have to find the groove that really gets everyone involved and in the offense and ready to go. And I think it's tough when you have so many different pieces that can be helpful for you.
Trace, a lot of people in the fan base who are down on James Franklin right now. And I know that comes to the territory. But speaking as a guy who committed to him a long time ago now, before he even got to Penn State, and he committed to you, what would you like people to know about James as a coach and sort of as a man?
Yeah, I think there is nothing that he would go to the ends of the earth to get the things corrected and, get this team to where, again, the fan base wants to be. And I think really just no one wants it more than him. And, things don't work out all the time. And, that's why you play the game. That's why you roll the ball out every Saturday, because, you love to compete and you love to play. But I think with what Coach Franklin does, he will leave no stone unturned. And the things that he feels he needs to get corrected, like he's going to make sure the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So he's going to devote his time, his energy into getting the things corrected that he feels needs to get corrected in order to bring this team to where they want to go. So I think just the main thing that I would just say about him is no one's going to work harder in order to bring this team to where it needs to be. And he's a very broad vision guy with it all. So he sees everything and will be able to devote his time and energy to the specific things that need to get.
Trace, you gave your heart and soul to the football program, heart and soul to the university. You're still coming back years later. What is that connection that you've developed, and how are your emotions different now walking into the stadium, whether you're going in through the media gate, whether you're going in through the players' tunnel? Can you just walk us through like what comes over you and how being in Beaver Stadium on a Saturday makes you feel?
Yeah, now it's just a different feeling because obviously you don't have the butterflies and pressure of walking in to get ready to play a game. Now you're kind of walking in and, looking forward to enjoying yourself and cheering on the guys that are on the field. But it's cool to see the energy outside the stadium. Like, that's something that as a player you never really get to see. Like kind of walking through the tailgate fields and seeing fans and everyone getting there super early. Like being able to see this weekend, everyone's there super early for game day and the big noon. I know people got their feelings about how big noon is and all that type of stuff, but it's just it's super cool to see everyone just showing up early and just feeling that energy outside the stadium, and to be able to still feel the love for the things that I was able to do at Penn State. Walking through and a couple of people recognize me here and there. It's cool to still feel that love from people, even though I'm so many years removed now.
Hey, Trace, is there one thing walking through there before the game that surprised you? You never expected to see that. Is there one kind of?
I don't know if there was one thing that surprised me. I mean, because even when I would go, I'd be playing there, you'd hear stories of what the tailgates were like from friends and family. So, and usually those stories are on the more wild side. So when I was walking through recently, there really wasn't anything that surprised me. I think it's just really cool just to see the energy outside the stadium and how people, rain or shine and snow, they're going to show up there ready to support. And I think that's just a really cool thing that regardless of, I've been to a couple games this year, I feel like the energy outside the stadium this week was pretty similar to like the UCLA game I was at earlier. Like it was still, everyone's fired up. And I think that's just really cool that they show up no matter what type of game it is.
Any predictions? Any predictions on the college football playoff? I was going to ask you about the election, but I wanted to go for something more important, college football playoff rankings.
Yeah. You like what? Top 12? Or
Trace McSorley, what do you think is going to be the college football playoff at the end of the year?
All right. So, I mean, the top four that Oregon, I think at this point has kind of shown that they'll be at that point until someone dethrones them. They'll be in there, and I think their biggest step's going to be whatever happens in the Big Ten championship. But so they're in. I think you're probably going to get more teams out of the Big Ten. So you'll probably get Ohio State. I do feel confident that Penn State will be in there. You're going to have your Georgia, probably Texas, Tennessee out of the SEC. You have your ACC champion looking like Miami. Let's see what Big 12,
whoever the BYU is undefeated.
BYU, yeah. So BYU out of the Big 12. I feel like I got to go there because right now they're just undefeated, and they got a lot of energy and a lot of just momentum right now. So I like them. I like Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, what he's doing. Like that's unheard of. I do think I got him as my Heisman favorite right now. And then how many teams is that right now? That's 9.
It was 9, yeah.
There's 9 there.
But I was 10. I was 10.
That's 10. Okay, that's 10 there. I think you probably, I could see Indiana sneaking in there because on their schedule they got Ohio State, but if they're a one-loss team and how they've been playing this year, I think they could be right at that. Alabama's going to be in the mix. Trying to think if there's any other SEC teams. I said Georgia. Said Texas. Yeah, I mean, I think the other ones that are coming to my mind are is Indiana and
all the Irish.
Notre Dame. Notre Dame's.
Those independents. I forget about them. I'm going conferences in my head. Irish. Yeah, Notre Dame will be in there because they only got the one loss right now.
We'd like to forget about Notre Dame since they're too good to join a conference. We'd always like to.
I'd like to see them officially join a conference and start playing a conference schedule.
How about as a former player and now a fan in a sense? Who do you most want to see? Who would you most want to see Penn State play first round playoff game, potentially at Beaver State?
I think I would love to see them play Tennessee. I think. I just think that'd be a really good matchup, and it's kind of one of those, Neyland's obviously an incredible stadium. We'll love for them to come check out Beaver Stadium and see kind of what their fan experience would be. I also think, if Alabama's able to sneak in there, that'd be a great matchup. Two obviously storied programs they played a few times in the previous years. I think that'd be a great one too. And then you're playing, one of the top teams in the SEC. That would be, I think a great challenge for us, and another opportunity to kind of put our foot down. And we dropped one to Ohio State, but now we're in the playoffs and we're playing a legit team, and we're able to pull that one out.
As a former quarterback, do you remember the great plays more that worked or the ones that got away at the end? Because I think fans remember them both. But
the ones that got away kind of stick with you a little bit more, just because they were, it was just those that right at the end you had it and it slipped through your fingers. And I think that's more the competitor in you, is like you just want, those are the ones that you want back. The great plays are awesome to look back on and reminisce when you're hanging out with your old teammates and having a couple drinks, everyone's chilling. Like, those are the fun ones. But even when you're doing that, like the ones that slip through your finger, like those tend to come up too. So I think personally the ones that slip through probably stick with me a little bit more. And I think it's just because those are the ones that they'll keep you up at night, because it didn't work out how you wanted it to.
Is there one that you still think back on?
It was, the one, again, the first one that's at the top of my mind is against USC in the Rose Bowl.
I thought that's what you were going to say. Yeah.
The one,
that was tough.
Not the interception play, but the one 2 plays before.
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
Got a little bit of pressure, and I was, we had Mike open down the field, and I couldn't step into it how I wanted to, and kind of shorted it, and ended up, defender got there and broke it up incomplete, and then a play or two later is when we threw the interception. But that one, if I hit Mike on that one, that sets us up in a great spot to kick that game-winning field goal.
The other, sort of related to that, do you ever get a sense, I'm thinking now of the Big Ten championship game in that year, do you ever get a sense that a game is turning your way or the other way? I remember when you guys scored near the end of the half in that game, I remember sitting next to Donnie Collins and another writer and saying, they're going to win. I think it's obvious that they're going to win, even though they're down a couple scores. It just felt like that game had turned. Do you ever get that sense? I mean, you're out there grinding snap after snap. Maybe you don't feel that, but do you ever have that kind of a feeling?
Yeah, you definitely do get that feeling. You could feel when that momentum's starting to go, and guys on the sidelines are start going, hey, let's go, like we got this thing rolling now. I think just we should really look at how that season played out. Is a lot of times we would defer, so we'd get the ball at the end of the second half, or at the start of the second half. So that ability to score right before halftime that we were pretty good at this year, in a 2-minute drive, even just going down and getting a field goal. But then you get the ball back at the start of the second half, you're able to basically have 2 drives and put together 2 scoring drives without them touching the ball. So for us, like, that was part of the strategic plan that we had in a lot of those games, knowing that we had a high-powered offense that worked really well at tempo. So even if we got the ball with 40 seconds at the end of the first half, we knew we were going to be jumping right into a 2-minute mode to try to get within field goal range to snag 3 points. And that, I think that helped us. You get those points, you get some momentum going into halftime, and then in the locker room at halftime, that's a lot of the conversation is we got the momentum now, we're getting the ball back. Let's make sure we capitalize on it.
Trace, last question, and it's probably going to be the toughest one you got asked here. Mike Gesicki and Tyler Warren both walk up to you, and you have to pick one of them for your Penn State alumni football tight end. Which one are you going to take?
Yeah, that's the toughest one I've had. I think I got to go Mike, because that's just, I've played with him. Yeah, that was my guy. But, I mean, Tyler's ability to do so many different things it would be a great luxury to have. Can you just give me both of them and we'll just roll? Like, would that be cool?
It'd be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool to see those two guys
on
the same field lined up on opposite sides. So Trace, you were a home run hitter on the field.
Pick Mike because Tyler's going to take snaps away from you, Trace.
That's a good point. I'm going to be lining up at receiver while they're snapping the ball at Tyler.
There you go.
Well, you're a home run hitter on the field. We thought we hit a home run by you agreeing to come on the podcast, so we really appreciate it, man. Look forward to the rest of the Penn State season, and hopefully we have you back on after Penn State wins a playoff game, and we're talking bowl games and top 4 and top 8 matchups. So thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Yeah, we'll get that book now. We're just planning on that after that first win in the playoffs, and we'll be talking about we're playing in the Final 4 games.
Nice.
Thanks, man.
I appreciate you guys.
Always great to hear from Trace McSorley. A lot of valuable insight he gave, just not on James Franklin, but taking us inside the locker room. And Frank, I love your question about walking through the tailgate lots and just how that's different for him experiencing that, because we get to see some of the alumni out there as the years pass, and a couple of adult sodas maybe that they've had. They seem to be having more of a great time than they did walking off the field after a big win.
How about Trace? He gets asked about who's going to be in the playoff, and he tries to do all 12 of them. God love him. Yeah, pretty strong.
He's a quarterback. He had them all in there. He knew what he was doing. And I like all his picks. I think he nailed them all.
Yeah, he got it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look for that Penn State Notre Dame matchup. I see that one floating around. But for that to happen, Penn State has to take care of business coming out here. Washington and head coach Jed Fish coming into Beaver Stadium, night game, streaming somewhere on Peacock. Make sure you get your subscriptions out there. Look for
this game being shown in theaters. What is that?
Right.
It's in York.
It is in York.
Go to the IMAX.
I'm going to report I'm going to do my live blog from the IMAX.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, this is a game. I mean, Penn State, you got to think, should win this game. This isn't Washington that was in the national championship. They lost 41 letter winners from last year, only bring back, a handful of starters. Washington has lost to Iowa, Indiana before beating USC at home. They're undefeated at home. You could kind of say Iowa and Indiana on the road mush the Huskies. Well, what do we make of this matchup?
I think they struggle to stop the run. Mm-hmm. They're pretty good against the pass. So we come back to this thing where maybe it'll be a game like Illinois, which that is sort of the avatar for Penn State, winning up front and the running backs doing their thing. It's a game that Penn State should win if they show up. And if they can shake off, if they can do that thing that players and Franklin both talked about, which is don't let one loss turn into two.
I think this is a very solid opponent that's not great in anything, but is pretty decent in everything. So I envision them struggling, or maybe the appearance of struggling a little bit, grinding out a win. But they got to, I'm going to look at how they do it, because they need to reset the run game. They need to somehow find their wide receivers, and they're not going to do it all in one night, right? But I want to look at kind of how they go about, no matter what the score is, how they go about the win, and they start correcting, improving some of the things that will mean everything come December, when they get that chance. So more how they do it than the final score to me.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, the stats on the pass defense for Washington, I think, is a little bit misleading based on their opponents. But I really think Penn State is going to come out and try to work on everything Frank, just said. Try to be solid in a total offensive performance right there, and just find a run game, find a nastiness up front. And if they do that and overexert themselves trying to do it, then so be it. If they force a couple things in the pass game to say we have to work on this, so be it. I think this is an opponent that they could do it for, because I think they have good talent over there. I don't think it's equal talent against Penn State. And speaking of that talent, who is the most dangerous Husky that's coming into Beaver Stadium that could cause Penn State problems, whether it's on the offense or defensive side of the ball? Because they do have some guys. Denzel Boston at wide receiver, he's a threat for Penn State's DBs to match up with. Jonah Coleman is running the ball extremely well. And after what Ohio State did at the end of the game, I mean, you have to think, maybe Washington could pop a couple runs, make this a little interesting football contest here late.
I think Coleman is the guy. You know, you got
I noticed.
Yeah,
Looking up there. I mean, he's 6 yards a carry. He's got almost 900 yards. He's had a really good year. You know,
he's the guy that's got to stop the run first, right? You can't let Washington become a dual threat. They're really not that good, but you can make them look that good, I think, if you enable Coleman to run when he wants to run, and for them to get short, second downs, third downs. You stop the run. I think you take them away pretty quick.
This is the guy that was at Mississippi State last year. People might have seen the quarterback I'm talking about. People might have seen him. He's a pretty good player, and he has good numbers this year. I mean, their offensive skill positions are pretty good, I think. But again, I think Penn State is the better team, and a lot of it is showing up and don't let one loss turn into two.
Yeah, just some notes on Boston. He has 44 catches, 583 yards, 9 TDs, which is top in the Big Ten. And then they have a 6-year senior, Giles Jackson, with 49 for 553 and 2 touchdowns. Some notes on Coleman. He talked about him being a home run hitter. Number 2 in FBS with 30 rushing plays of 10 yards or longer. And he's 6th in FBS with 37 scrimmage plays of 10-plus yards. So he could rip off some chunks both ways. Very, very good player. One thing we missed out on with 1994 flashback before we get to our picks for this week. Nittany Lion flashback, and undefeated and number 2 and number 1 ranked Nittany Lions headed out to Bloomington, Indiana, up and down for 3 quarters. Midway in the 4th, 28-14 after an IU score. Kajana Carter goes 80 yards for a touchdown. Next drive, Brian Gelsheimer returns a fumble for 75 yards, but it's called back on a weak face mask call. Indiana scores after to make it 35-21. Hoosiers got the ball back with under a minute left. They hit a Hail Mary with under 20 seconds left for a 35-29 final. And that is why Penn State never really got the respect of the voters, because they didn't watch the game. Penn State threw 2 picks, had a punt return called back by Mike Archie, a defensive touchdown called back, I already mentioned, and a missed fumble on Indiana, and they dropped 2 interceptions. They still controlled that game, but Penn State goes uncrowned because of a rainy day out on the Bloomington Plains in Indiana. So that being said, Penn State doesn't have to worry about that. They're not trying to impress anybody except the subcommittee. You win, you take care of business, and you move on. Step number 1 with that is taking care of Washington. Don't let that become Michigan State in 2017. 1 loss can't become 2. Washington, Penn State, under the lights at Beaver Stadium. Who are we picking to win this game, and who wants to step up and go first?
I think I'll go. How's that?
Go.
Sorry. I think it's going to be kind of a similar game to Illinois, potentially. Grind it out a little bit. I think there'll be a lot more yards than there will be points, and I'm going. But Penn State always keeping Washington at arm's length, 24-13.
Yeah, that sounds good. I have 33-20. I even as I say that, I suspect it might not be that high scoring. That might be a little bit of a reach in terms of, especially the way Penn State, as questionable as they are offensively, but I do think Penn State's. You think about 2 years ago, Penn State was in this situation. They lost to Michigan, they lost to Ohio State. They dominated their last 4 opponents. I mean, they kicked the crap out of their last 4 opponents in a very similar spot, coming off of the loss to Ohio State. I think Penn State has a decent track record of picking itself up in these kind of spots. So I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, outside of a few games, I think Penn State does bounce back. I toyed with the idea of going with 31, and then I thought I don't. Maybe it's because I would just watch the receivers just be totally absent from the game, and I'm like, I don't think Penn State could get into the 30s. So I was torn between going 23-10, 23-13. I'm going to stick with Frank's number at 13, or I'm sorry, 27 instead of 23. I'm going to stick with Frank's number at 13, and I'm going 27-13, Penn State winning. And I do think they try to come out and work heavily on stuff and maybe force, I don't want to say a square peg into a round hole, but they're really going to try to establish some things that they did not do well against Ohio State with that. And I do think they need to bring Bo Prabula and get a little bit more back into that, kind of how Trace said about making sure guys get on a roll. So
I'm really interested to see what Kotelnicki comes up with in this spot after being so mystified by what he came up with in the last spot. So
yeah, I think they lost their identity. Frank, would you agree that this is kind of a game where you thought Penn State gets back to their identity and kind of resets themselves for second season, but to just
second season? That's going to be similar to 2 years ago. It is a second season to me in a big way. Only this one has more to give at the end. So you think more incentive for the players. And they do have to reset themselves. And the nation's going to be not judging them on anything they do positively for another month, probably. But, hey, you work behind the scenes, going to test the leadership, going to test the guys, how they feel about each other. So, yeah. We'll see.
Final question, and then we're going to sign off. Does it have to be an impressive win for Penn State in the minds of everyone?
No, not to me.
No, not really. No, it doesn't have to be. And again, we are in, as we've said, as Frank just said, it's a new normal. It's a different thing now. It's a playoff tournament sport. So I think that kind of stuff is not as big of an issue as it once was, that kind of stuff.
Well, we should find out if Penn State's ready to move on past Ohio State or if they have a hangover. We know some fans had a hangover after the game, both, from the field and maybe from the tailgate lots. So really happy here on the Blue White Tailgate Podcast. That's another great episode. I want to thank Trace McSorley for coming on, Mike Gross at LNP, and Frank Bodani at the York Daily Record. Send them questions. Let them know. Get them answered. They find them for you. Penn State, Washington, the defending national runner-up. Back, that's not even the same team, under the lights at Beaver Stadium. Should be a good one. They're coming in off an emotional win. Penn State, the emotional down. We will see what happens. Push towards that college football playoff for the Blue and White begins right now. Thanks for listening, watching. We will see you next week.